You are not watching this video by accident. There is a reason you were guided here at this exact moment in your life. Because the more people chase reality, the more exhausted, anxious, and disconnected they become. They spend years forcing outcomes, fighting circumstances, and wondering why nothing truly changes. But Genevieve Behrend believed something completely different. She believed that reality does not respond to desperation. It responds to the condition of the mind itself. And the moment the mind becomes quiet, something extraordinary begins to happen. Life starts to shift. Opportunities begin to appear. The inner struggle slowly dissolves. And reality begins reflecting a different version of you. Most people never understand this. They search endlessly outside themselves, without realizing that the true source of change has always been within. And what you are about to hear may completely change the way you see your own mind, and the reality you experience every single day. Think about the last time your mind was truly quiet. Not distracted quiet. Not exhausted quiet. Actually still. For most of us, it is hard to even remember. We wake up already thinking. We fall asleep still running through tomorrow. And in between, we carry this constant low-level hum of worry, of planning, of replaying what went wrong and rehearsing what might. We call this being productive. We call this being responsible. But what if all that noise is the very thing standing between us and the life we keep saying we want? There was a woman who understood this in a way that most people never do. Not as a theory, as a lived truth. She tested it on herself, in real circumstances, with real stakes. And what she discovered changed her life completely. And then, through her teaching, changed the lives of thousands of others. Her name was Genevieve Behrend. And her message, over a century later, is somehow more needed now than it has ever been. If you are here because something feels stuck, in your work, in your relationships, in the gap between who you are and who you know you could be, this is for you. Stay with it. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because this is not about information. It is about remembering something you already know. Now, let us begin the journey inward, and awaken the hidden power within. The mind you carry is the life you live. Here is something most of us were never taught. Your mind is not just where you think. It is where you create. Not in some abstract, poetic sense. In a real and measurable sense. The images you hold consistently in your mind, the expectations you carry about yourself, about money, about love, about what is possible for someone like you. These are not passive observations. They are active instructions. And life, in ways both visible and invisible, tends to organize itself around them. Genevieve Behrend called this the creative power of the mind. And she was specific about what she meant. She was not talking about wishful thinking or positive affirmations you repeat without believing. She was talking about the deep impressions, the ones beneath the surface thoughts, the ones you have been carrying so long you have stopped noticing them, and the way those impressions quietly shape everything. Think about a pattern in your life that keeps repeating. A financial ceiling you keep hitting. A relationship dynamic that shows up in different people but always feels the same. A moment where things are going well and then, inexplicably, something happens and you are back where you started. You might have blamed circumstances. You might have blamed other people. But what if the pattern was never out there? What if it was in here, in the mental atmosphere you have been generating without even realizing it? This is not a comfortable idea, but it is a liberating one. Because if the mind is creating the pattern, then the mind can change it. Behrend understood this not as philosophy, but as personal experience. She had been living a life shaped by impressions she had never consciously chosen. Impressions of limitation, of what was realistic, of what someone in her position could reasonably expect. And when she first encountered the idea that those impressions were not fixed, that they could be deliberately replaced, something shifted in her that never shifted back. She began to pay attention to her own mental life in a new way. Not judging it, not fighting it, simply watching it. Noticing what she was habitually holding in her mind, what images, what assumptions, What quiet expectations? And then, with a patience and a consistency that most people underestimate, she began to change those impressions. One deliberate image at a time. One moment of conscious redirection at a time. The results did not come all at once. They rarely do. But they came. And each small demonstration of the principle gave her more faith in it, which gave her more consistency in practicing it, which produced more results. It was a spiral, but upward, not downward. This is the foundational truth that everything else in Behrend's teaching rests on. The mind you carry is the life you live. Not eventually. Now. Every day. In ways you can see and in ways you cannot. And if that is true, if the mind really is that powerful, then there is one practice above all others that determines the quality of everything it creates. That practice is stillness. And what that actually means, and why so few people ever really achieve it, is exactly what we explore next. What mental imaging actually is, and why most people do it wrong. The word visualization gets used a lot. And most people, when they hear it, think of something like this. Sit down, close your eyes, imagine what you want, feel good about it, open your eyes, and wait for it to show up. And then it does not show up. And they conclude that visualization does not work. But what they were doing was not what Genevieve Behrend meant by mental imaging. It was not even close. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Surface visualization is like writing a letter and never sending it. True mental imaging, the kind Behrend practiced and taught, is like changing the address you live at. It works at a deeper level than the thinking mind. It works at the level of impression, of conviction, of the settled inner certainty that something is already true. Here is how she described the practice. You do not strain to produce an image. You do not force it into being with mental effort. You relax into it. You create the conditions, stillness, intention, genuine emotional engagement, and then you allow the image to form naturally. Not as something you are hoping for, as something you are already experiencing from the inside. That last part is where most people lose it. They hold the image from the outside, watching themselves in a future scenario like watching a movie. Behrend was specific. You place yourself inside the image. You feel the temperature of the room. You hear the sounds. You experience the feelings not of someone who wants this reality, but of someone who is already in it. Present tense. First person. Real. And then, and this is the part that requires the most discipline, you release the anxiety about whether it will happen. You do not check on it obsessively. You do not monitor every circumstance for signs. You simply hold it, feel it, trust it, and let it go. She did this when she decided to become the private student of a teacher who had never taken private students, when she had almost no money and no connection to him. She did not know how it would happen. She did not try to engineer it. She held the image of sitting with him as his student, steady, calm, real, and she let the universe find its own path to that result. Which it did. In ways she could never have planned. Most people cannot sustain this practice because the moment they close their eyes and try to hold an image of what they want, the very next thought that arrives is a list of reasons why it probably will not happen. The mind contradicts itself. The signal gets scrambled. The creative process is interrupted before it can take root. This is why the practice of inner stillness is not optional. It is the prerequisite. You cannot hold a clear image in a chaotic mind. The image needs ground to grow in. And that ground is quiet. Real quiet. The kind that most of us have to learn, because in the world we live in, no one teaches it and everything competes against it. How do you actually build that quiet? What does it look and feel like in a real human life, not in a retreat center or a philosophy book? That is where we go next, and it is closer than you think. The quiet mind, how to actually find it in a noisy world. No one talks about this honestly enough. Inner silence is hard. Not because we are broken or undisciplined, because we live in a world that profits from our distraction. That has been engineered, in thousands of visible and invisible ways, to keep our attention fragmented and our minds in a state of constant low-level agitation. Quiet is not something that happens to us in this world. It is something we have to choose, deliberately, against considerable resistance. Genevieve Behrend understood that the quiet mind is where everything real begins. She called it the listening state, not listening to anything external, but developing the capacity to be genuinely receptive. To stop generating for long enough to receive. To let the mind settle the way water settles when you stop stirring it. But she was not naive about how difficult this is. She knew that most people, when they first try to be still, discover just how loud their minds really are. The thoughts rush in. The to-do lists appear. The worries resurface. And the natural response is to think that something is wrong, that they are failing at stillness, that they are somehow worse at this than other people. She would say, no, that is not failure. That is the first honest look at what your mind has been doing all along, just beneath the surface. You are not creating the noise when you sit down to be quiet. You are finally hearing it. And that hearing, that honest witnessing of the mental noise without judgment, is itself the beginning of the practice. You do not fight the thoughts. You do not try to push them away. You simply notice them. You let them be there, and you gently redirect your attention to something quieter. Your breath. The sensation of your body. The silence behind the noise. Again and again, not with frustration, but with patience. Over time, not immediately, but over time, a different quality of awareness begins to emerge. A spaciousness. A stillness that does not feel empty but feels full, present, alive. And in that stillness, something Behrend described as a knowing begins to come through. Not thoughts you generate. Thoughts that arrive. Clarity that appears without effort. Solutions to problems you had been straining to solve. This is what she meant when she said the universe responds when the mind becomes quiet. Not as a metaphor. As a description of what actually happens when you stop broadcasting long enough to receive. In practical terms, she taught a daily practice of what we might now call contemplative silence, a period of time set aside each day, however brief, to simply be still. Not to meditate in any complex or ritualized sense. Just to sit, to breathe, to let the mind settle, and to practice holding attention on the present moment rather than the noise of past and future. The effects of this practice ripple out in ways that are hard to predict. People who maintain it consistently report not just moments of insight but a fundamental shift in how they move through their days. Less reactive. More perceptive. More able to hold steady when circumstances become difficult. More naturally drawn toward the right action at the right moment, without the exhausting effort of trying to figure everything out in advance. The quiet mind is not a luxury. It is the source. And learning to access it is not a spiritual achievement, it is a human skill. One that Behrend believed every person carries the capacity for, regardless of background, temperament, or circumstance. But there is one thing that even a quiet mind needs in order to create, and it is something that sounds simple but is actually one of the rarest things in the world. It is the subject of our next chapter. The kind of faith that actually works. Most of us were taught a version of faith that does not work. We were taught that faith means believing something will happen while privately being unsure that it will. We were taught to hope, to wish, to try to stay positive while bracing ourselves for disappointment. That is not faith. That is anxiety dressed in hopeful language. Genevieve Behrend described something completely different. She called it a mental attitude, not a feeling that fluctuates with circumstances, but a settled inner posture. A way of relating to the creative power of the universe that is stable and consistent, regardless of what the outer world appears to be saying. The distinction matters enormously. Feelings come and go. They respond to what we see and hear. If you rely on feeling confident in order to act with conviction, you will always be at the mercy of external circumstances. Every setback will shake you. Every delay will erode your momentum. Every person who doubts you will introduce doubt into yourself. But a mental attitude is different. A mental attitude is a choice that you return to, deliberately, every time the noise tries to pull you away from it. It is not the absence of fear. It is the practice of not letting fear be in charge. Behrend was honest about this. She had moments of fear on the way to the life she was building. She had moments when the outer circumstances looked bleak and the inner conviction wavered. What distinguished her was not that she never felt those things. It is that she refused to let them be her final word. She would notice the fear, acknowledge it, and then consciously, deliberately return to the image, to the certainty, to the mental posture of someone who already knows this is going to work. She also taught something that is genuinely difficult for most people: releasing the need to control how the outcome arrives. We tend to hold our intentions and simultaneously hold a very specific idea of what the path to that intention should look like. And when the path does not match our expectation, we interpret it as evidence that the intention is failing, and we let go of it. But the universe does not work through our plans. It works through its own intelligence, which is far more capable of finding a path than our limited thinking mind. When you are truly in the mental attitude of faith, you hold the intention firmly and the path loosely. You remain genuinely open to the outcome arriving in a way you could not have imagined. And you act on every inner prompting, every intuition, every door that opens, even when it does not look like the door you expected. This is the quality that separates the people who see results from those who almost see results. Not smarter thinking. Not better planning. The willingness to trust something larger than their own ideas about how things should unfold. Real faith is not passive. It is one of the most active things a human being can practice. And when it is combined with a quiet mind and a clear intention, it becomes something the world has very few names for, but that everyone, at some point in their life, has felt the edge of. There is one more thing. Everything we have explored, the quiet mind, the clear image, the faith that does not flinch, means nothing if it stays in the room where you practice it. The final chapter is about what happens when you take this out into your actual life. When you stop waiting for the perfect conditions. When you begin living, right now, as if the things you are building are already real. Living as if it is already true. There is a moment that Genevieve Behrend wrote about, a moment she described as the turning point in her own inner practice. It was the moment she stopped asking whether it would work, and simply began living as if it already had. Not performing. Not pretending. Actually shifting the center of gravity of her daily life from the current outer reality to the intended inner one. Making decisions not from the life she was currently living but from the life she knew she was in the process of building. This sounds abstract until you feel the difference in your body. There is a way of moving through the day that is shaped by limitation. Cautious, defensive, managing expectations. And there is a way of moving through the day that is shaped by an inner knowing. Open, creative, genuinely expecting good things. These two ways of being produce completely different results. Not because of luck. Because they are sending completely different signals. Behrend was not talking about naivety. She was not saying ignore your bills or pretend problems do not exist. She was saying this: your relationship to those problems can come from a completely different place. Instead of the anxious, contracted mind that is trying to survive, you can meet every challenge from the quiet, grounded, clear mind that already knows something larger is at work. This changes everything about how you show up. In conversations. In decisions. In the energy you carry into a room. People respond to that energy in ways they cannot always explain. Opportunities become visible that were invisible before. Not because they appeared from nowhere, but because a different quality of attention finally made them noticeable. The practical form of this, as Behrend described it, is simple but not easy. You live today from the feelings and the inner posture of the person you are becoming. Not performing that person for the world. Actually inhabiting that inner space, even for moments at a time. You make choices from that space. You respond to difficulties from that space. You begin each morning with a few minutes of deliberately inhabiting the mental atmosphere of your intended reality, and then you carry traces of that atmosphere with you into the rest of the day. Over time, the outer life begins to reorganize around that atmosphere. Not all at once. Not without challenges or setbacks. But with a kind of steady, unmistakable momentum that is different from anything you experience when you are forcing and straining and trying to make things happen through sheer effort. What Behrend was describing, and what she demonstrated throughout her own life, is a fundamentally different relationship with the act of living. One where you are not fighting the world, not waiting on the world, not hoping the world will eventually give you something, but collaborating with the creative intelligence of the universe, quietly and consistently, from the inside out. She said once that the whole of her teaching could be reduced to one thing: make your inner world so real, so vivid, so settled, that the outer world has no choice but to conform to it. Most people never try this. Not because they are incapable, but because they have never been told it was possible. They have never seen it modeled. They have never had anyone look them in the eye and say, "The power you are looking for is not out there. It has always been in here. In the mind. In the quiet. In the image you choose to hold. You are now someone who has been told. What you do with it is up to you." Everything we have walked through together, the creative mind, the practice of imaging, the discovery of inner silence, the mental attitude of faith, and the courage to live from the inside out, these are not separate ideas. They are one idea, seen from different angles. The idea is this: you are more powerful than you have been acting. Not in a grandiose way. In a quiet, real, daily way. In the way you choose what to hold in your mind this morning. In the way you respond to difficulty, whether from the noisy surface or the quiet depth. In the decision, made again and again, to return to the image of the life you are building rather than the evidence of the life you are leaving. Genevieve Behrend lived this. She made mistakes. She had fear. She had days when nothing seemed to be working. And she kept going, not from blind optimism, but from a genuine understanding of how the universe operates and an unwillingness to send it anything less than her clearest, most honest, most trusting signal. That same understanding is available to you. Not someday. Now. With the mind you have, in the life you are actually living, beginning with the very next choice you make about what to hold in your attention. If this has touched something real in you, please do not let it sit. Share it with someone who is searching. Subscribe so we can keep going deeper together. And leave a comment. Tell us what part of this landed most, or what question it opened in you. We read every one. The quiet mind is not a destination. It is a practice. And every time you return to it, the universe gets a clearer signal. Give it something worth responding to. The only way to keep what you have is to keep giving it away. Genevieve Behrend.